Welcome to Amplifying Impact, the podcast for leaders who strive to create exceptional experiences, develop high-performing teams, and lead with purpose. I'm Mark Watkins, the founder of Amplifying Impact Events. I bring decades of leadership experience rooted in the hospitality industry. However, because the pursuit of growth, excellence, and meaningful impact is a universal goal, the principles I share apply to leaders across all industries and sectors. Each episode delivers actionable insights and practical tools to help you amplify your impact on your team, customers, and community. You'll get valuable content, enough to make a real difference in your leadership journey. However, the complete transformation awaits you at our live events. Let's get started and amplify your impact together.
What does a truly intentional leader look like? Not just someone who's great at one thing, not the visionary who can't execute, not the executor who can't grow people, and not the people developer who has no strategic clarity. An intentional leader is someone who operates at a high level across three fundamental dimensions: character, strategy, and capacity. And here's the problem I see in organizations all the time. Most leaders are strong in one, decent in another, and struggling in a third. And nobody ever shows them the full picture, the complete map of what excellence looks like across all three dimensions. Today, I'm going to show you that map. I'm going to show you why becoming an intentional leader isn't just good personal development. It's the most important thing that you can do for your organization. Welcome back to the Amplifying Impact podcast. I'm Mark Watkins. Since I introduced the Impact Leadership Assessment Framework in episode 2, I've been working on a significant enhancement, and today I'm excited to finally share it. When I launched it, the assessment already delivered real clarity and direction, helping leaders identify where they were strong, where they were stuck, and where to focus next. What I've built on top of that foundation goes deeper. The same assessment now provides expanded analysis and feedback and gives leaders insight into how they fit within and contribute to their organizations, not just how they're developing as individuals, but how their leadership connects to the bigger picture. And the price hasn't changed. This assessment is still $249 per leader, even though the value has multiplied. Stick around until the end of the episode because I have a limited offer you won't want to miss. Today, we're talking about the intentional impact leader, what that looks like, how the 6 impact elements map across 3 leadership dimensions, and how you can use this framework to identify exactly where to focus your development energy. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that right now. On YouTube, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. On Spotify or Apple Podcasts, hit the follow so you'll never miss an episode. Every episode in this series builds on the last, and you'll want all of it. All right, let's get into it. Let me paint a picture I see all the time. A business owner promotes their best performer into a leadership role. The person's excellent. They know operations inside and out. They deliver results, and they work harder than anyone else. So the promotion, it makes sense. 6 months later, the team is struggling, turnover is up, morale is down, and the promoted leader is frustrated because they're doing everything they've always done, but it's not working. Here's what happened. That leader was operating in one dimension. They had execution capability, maybe even strategic clarity, but they hadn't developed the character foundation to lead with trust and integrity, and they hadn't built the capacity to multiply themselves through others. One-dimensional leadership has a ceiling. You can only go so far with one strength before the gaps in the other areas start to drag everything down. This is exactly why the Impact Leadership Assessment exists, not just to identify your strongest element, but to give you a complete picture. Sustainable leadership excellence requires balance across all 3 dimensions. All right, let me introduce those 3 dimensions to you. When I look at the 6 impact elements, influence with integrity, multiply what matters, pursue clarity and excellence, act with intentionality, cultivate growth, and transform through service, they don't just sit in isolation. They cluster together into 3 core leadership dimensions. Think of it as 3 circles in a Venn diagram. And I've published a graphic of this, and I have a link in the show notes. Each circle represents a dimension. Where those circles overlap, something powerful emerges. And in the center, where all 3 intersect, you'll find the intentional impact leader. Okay, the first dimension is character. This is the foundation. Without it, everything else eventually collapses. Character synthesizes 2 impact elements: the influence with integrity, which is aligning your values and actions to build trust, and the transform through service, which is prioritizing contribution and humility over control. A leader with strong character is doing two things consistently. First, they're speaking truth, having the difficult or uncomfortable conversation necessary to keep values and actions aligned. They're not avoiding hard topics to keep the peace, but engaging in them because integrity demands it. The second thing that this person is doing consistently is choosing humility, actively prioritizing the needs of the team, celebrating others' wins, and resisting the pull towards self-promotion. Character leaders understand that real influence is not earned, not demanded. Here's why character is the foundation. Character is internal, but it's invisible until it shows up in how someone leads. You can have all the strategy in the world and all the execution capacity imaginable, but if your team doesn't trust you, none of it reaches its potential. Trust is the currency of leadership. Let me repeat that. Trust is the currency of leadership. Character, this foundational dimension, is how you earn and maintain it. The second dimension is strategy. This is the direction. If character is the foundation, strategy is the direction. It answers the question, are we focused on the right things done the right way? Strategy synthesizes pursue clarity and excellence, which is defining what good looks like with measurable, specific expectations, and the act with intentionality element, which is ensuring daily actions align with the broader mission. A strategic leader is consistently doing two things. The first is they're defining excellence, not accepting good enough, but articulating specific, measurable standards so that the team always knows exactly what success looks like. Clarity creates alignment. Alignment creates momentum. The second thing that a strategic leader is doing is scheduling priorities. This is protecting time for strategic work, the work that no one else can do, and preventing reactive leadership from consuming the calendar. Intentional leaders don't let urgency constantly override importance. That dynamic, the balancing of urgency and importance, is something that we'll talk about later in another episode when we look at the tool that I have called the GRIP matrix, which is an iteration of the standard Eisenhower matrix, but it's a way to act with intentionality as you go throughout your day. So strategy is directional, but it's meaningless until it shows up in what someone does every day. Strategy without character becomes cold and transactional. Strategy without capacity becomes a vision that never scales. But when strategy sits alongside both, it becomes the directional force that focuses all the energy of a high-performing team. The third dimension is capacity. This is the multiplier. Character is the foundation, strategy is the direction, and capacity is the multiplier. Capacity is what separates leaders who produce results from leaders who build organizations that produce results without depending on any single person. That's a key distinction. A leader who produces results versus a leader who builds organizations that produce the results. Capacity synthesizes multiply what matters, which is building systems and people to scale impact, and the element cultivating growth, which is creating a learning environment where others thrive. The high capacity leader does two specific things consistently. First, they mentor others, building capable teams through intentional development plans, not just doing great work, but teaching others to do great work. The second thing that a capacity leader is doing consistently is modeling vulnerability, creating psychological safety by being genuinely teachable and curious about their own growth. Leaders who model learning give permission for everyone else around them to learn. Capacity is potential, but it's unrealized until it shows up in what someone builds in others. Capacity is where most experienced leaders have the biggest gap. They've developed character over time. They've built strategic clarity, but they're still in the hub of the wheel. Everything flows through them. And that's a bottleneck, not a leadership system. All right, here's the framework in 3 words: reveal, clarify, and multiply. Character reveals, strategy clarifies, and capacity multiplies. Character reveals. It uncovers what's already there. Who a leader is shows up in how they respond under pressure, how they treat people when no one is watching, and whether their words and action align. Strategy clarifies. It sharpens what could be vague. It turns ambition into direction and intent into daily action. And then finally, capacity multiplies. It grows what exists into something larger. A leader with capacity doesn't just produce results. They build the people and systems that produce results long after they step back. It's important to understand that leadership is not defined by intention. Character reveals itself through behavior. Strategy clarifies itself through behavior, and capacity multiplies itself through behavior. If you want more leadership content like this, practical frameworks, not motivational noise, subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter, The Leadership Hub. I publish monthly insights that introduce the concepts. Then we go deeper on those topics here in the podcast. Search the Leadership Hub on LinkedIn to subscribe. I'll also leave a link to the newsletter in the show notes. Now let's take a break for a word from our sponsor, Amplifying Impact Events.
What you're hearing today is one piece of a much larger system. The frameworks shared on this podcast, whether it's a leadership assessment tool or a goal-setting approach, all connect to a single purpose, helping you build an organization that doesn't just perform, but scales. And scales without you having to carry it all. We believe people are the key to unlocking everything else. And when you develop the right leaders, every other part of your organization performs at a higher level. That's what we do through Amplifying Impact Events. There's also something we've seen proven out time and again. The right outside voice changes what's possible. Not because an outside perspective is always smarter, but because it sees what you can't see when you're inside the organization every day. That's the value we bring. Depending on where you are and what you need, we work with leaders and the organizations they lead in 3 ways. The first is the Impact Leadership Assessment. This is a structured leader-level assessment paired with a 90-day habit formation plan. We identify where your leader is strong, where they're stuck, and what to develop next with a clear, prioritized roadmap to get there. If you have a leader who's hitting a ceiling or a high-potential team member who needs a defined growth path, this is the starting point. The second is the Gravity Framework, an organizational structural assessment. This is a diagnostic session designed to identify where work is stalling in your organization. We pinpoint task stagnation, missing leadership layers, and structural gaps, then build either a 90-day release plan or a 6-month build plan to restore healthy task flow. If you're the kind of leader who still finds yourself doing work that should belong to someone else, this framework is for you. The third is a Leadership Summit or Strategy Intensive, a facilitated half-day or full-day session built around your organization's current priorities. Your team walks away with shared language, practical tools, and clear direction. It's the right investment when you need alignment, whether you're entering a growth season, navigating a leadership transition, or resetting your team's culture. Every engagement we offer starts the same way, with a complimentary discovery conversation. Not a sales pitch, a diagnosis. Because the right solution depends on knowing where you are. If today's episode gave you something useful, imagine what a structured engagement could do for your entire leadership team. Visit amplifyingimpactevents.com to learn more or reach out directly at events@amplifyingimpactevents.com to start the conversation.
Welcome back. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. When you lay these 3 dimensions, character, strategy, and capacity, over each other in a Venn diagram, the intersections tell you something important about how a leader actually operates in the real world. When character and strategy intersect, you get what I call principled execution. This is a zone where high standards and intentional actions are guided by deep integrity and trust. This leader doesn't just know what excellence looks like, they model it personally. They don't just set strategic direction, they demonstrate the character that makes people want to follow them. Principled execution is what makes leadership feel authentic rather than performative. It's the difference between a leader who says, "Here are our values," and a leader whose team says, "Watch how she handles this. That's what our values look like in practice." Now, when character and capacity intersect, you get what I call empowered culture. This is where a service-oriented mindset meets the ability to grow and develop others. A leader operating in this space doesn't just lead with humility. They actively build others' capacity through it. They create environments where team members feel safe to take risks, ask questions, and grow because the leader models that exact behavior. Empowered culture is the antidote to the hierarchical and command and control environment that pushes talent out the door. It's where people stay and grow. The next overlap, when strategy and capacity intersect, you get what I call sustainable scaling. This is where excellence in systems and intentional focus allow organizations to multiply its results without losing quality. This leader has built the clarity of a strategic thinker and the systems of a capacity builder, and the result is an organization that can grow without the leader's personal involvement being the limiting factor. Most organizations struggle to scale, not because of market limitations, but because their leaders haven't developed sustainable scaling capability. The leader is still the bottleneck. And then finally, at the center, where character, strategy, and capacity all intersect, you find the intentional impact leader. This is a leader who's balanced, consistent, and effective across all organizational dimensions. Not perfect. It's important that we're not aiming for perfection, not equally strong in every element on every given day, but systematically developed across the three dimensions so that no single gap is a chronic drag on the team or the organization. This is the standard, not the ceiling. It's a North Star, something we want to aim towards, not a standard that we want to meet. All right, so now you understand the three dimensions and how they connect. The question is, where are you? This is exactly what the Impact Leadership Assessment is designed to answer. The assessment evaluates you across all 6 impact elements, and when we score it, we can immediately see which of the three dimensions is your strongest, which needs the most development, and which intersections are driving your leadership and which are limiting it. Here's something important. I want you to understand the purpose of the assessment isn't to make you feel bad about your gaps. It's to give you the highest leverage starting point for your development. Because here's the truth. You can't work on everything at once. Trying to develop all 6 elements simultaneously is a recipe for shallow progress everywhere and deep progress nowhere. The assessment identifies your lowest scoring element, and that becomes your focus starting point. You build it systematically, and then you move on to the next element. But the Intentional Impact Leader framework adds another layer. Beyond identifying where to start, it helps you see the pattern. Which dimension is the most underdeveloped and how it's affecting the intersections? Because a character gap affects both principal execution and empower culture, and a capacity gap limits both empower culture and sustainable scaling. The map matters as much as the starting point. And here's what makes this assessment even more powerful than it might appear on the surface. When you score across all 6 elements, your results maps to 1 of 10 possible leadership profiles, each defined by your highest scoring dimensions. And here's why that matters. The feedback isn't generic. Based on your profile, I can speak directly to you as the leader about how you're wired and where your blind spots tend to live. I can speak to the leader above you about how best to develop and coach you. And then I can speak to the organization about how to position and leverage your strengths for maximum impact. 1 assessment, 3 levels of personalized feedback. This personalized feedback is something that we unpack fully in our live engagements, and it's one of the reasons the impact assessment creates the kind of personalized development that generic leadership simply can't match. Before I get into the next steps, I want to share something I announced in my March edition of the Leadership Hub. And if you're not subscribed to the newsletter yet, this is a good reason to be. I mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast. For individual leaders who are ready to stop guessing and start developing with precision, I'm running a limited time offer on the Impact Leadership Assessment through April 15th, 2026. I'll give you the full details in a moment, but first, let me frame why this matters in the context of everything that we've covered today. Everything we've talked about today, the 3 dimensions, the 6 elements, the intersections, the 10 profiles, it all points to one question. Where do you stand right now? Not in theory, not based on a gut feeling, based on data. That's what the Impact Leadership Assessment gives you. And right now, through April 15th, 2026, I'm making it accessible to individual leaders at a reduced rate of $199. That's $50 off the standard rate. Here's exactly what's included, because I want to make sure you're getting your money's worth, and I want to over-deliver. The first thing is the assessment and profile. You complete the full Impact Leadership Assessment and receive a scored breakdown across all 6 elements. But your results don't just tell you your lowest score. They're mapped against all 3 dimensions so you can see the full pattern. Which dimension is carrying you? Which one is quietly limiting you? How those gaps are actually showing up in your leadership right now. The second thing you receive is the debrief. We will walk through your profile together on a video call. I help interpret what your data is telling you, identify the highest leverage development priority, and build a focused starting point. Not a vague to-do list, but clear, specific direction. The third thing you receive is your development tool. Based on your results, you receive a proprietary framework tool that's matched specifically to your gap area or your focus area. This is the same tool I use with the organizational clients. You'll know exactly what to work on and how to approach it. And then the last thing that's included is 90 days of support and accountability. Development without follow-through doesn't stick. I stay in your corner with 30-day check-ins to track progress, answer questions, and keep you accountable to the work you committed to do. If we find that the tool that I equip you with in the original call isn't working or giving you the traction, we'll simply look at other options to get that progress. This isn't a personality quiz. It's a systematic diagnostic that gives you the clearest picture you'll ever have of where your leadership is strong, where it's costing you, and what to focus on first. The intentional leader isn't the one who works hard on everything. It's the one who knows exactly where to focus. This offer runs through April 15th, 2026. To get started, visit amplifyingimpactevents.com/impact-assessment. I'll also leave a link in the show notes. If you're a business owner listening to this who has leaders on your team who need this kind of clarity, reach out directly. The organizational version of this assessment goes even deeper, and I'd welcome a conversation about what it looks like for your team. You can reach me at events@amplifyingimpact.com or visit amplifyingimpact.com to schedule a consultation. Before I close, if this episode gave you a clear picture of what intentional leadership looks like, would you take 30 seconds to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or a rating on Spotify? It helps other leaders find this content, and it means a lot to know that this work is making a difference. Thanks for joining me on the Amplifying Impact podcast. If this episode has helped you see leadership development differently, please share it with another leader who is ready to move beyond conventional approaches. Leadership is better when we lift each other up. For more resources and to explore bringing the complete impact leadership assessment framework to your organization, visit amplifyingimpactevents.com. You can also check out the full podcast archive at amplifyingimpactpodcast.com. Until next time, keep amplifying your impact, and remember, the world needs the unique leader that only you can be.